All right, check this out. How you think affects muscle growth. I'm not just talking about consistency and the psychology behind exercise. I mean, literally, how you think while you do a lift can change how it affects your muscles. Studies have confirmed this. In other words, if you're focusing on a particular muscle, you improve its activation. If you focus on a movement, you can lift more weight. So if you lift heavy, or if you're bodybuilding and sculpting, you got to change your mindset. This is totally overlooked.
So, okay, explain that a little bit deeper. So do you mean like say I go to the gym, I'm getting ready to do squats, and I got in a fight with my wife right before I walked in there, and I'm like doing and like I'm thinking about that stuff. That will negatively impact the lift, like weight-wise, or because sometimes I feel like that contributes.
Well,
just being honest.
You can either channel it or it can completely screw up your lift.
So they've done studies on this where they'll have someone do a lift and they'll have them focus on the muscle. So they'll say, I'll give an example. Do a bench press and then focus on the chest working. Focus on the
so you mean in particular like what muscle I'm trying to
Well, that's one. That's one aspect. And so those studies will show that there's more or better activation. So this is really valuable when you're trying to target a specific muscle group. But then also on the other side, how you think can also affect the amount of weight you can lift. So they've got studies where people will go in and psych themselves up or focus on being tight or just focus on perfect movement, not necessarily focusing on a specific muscle, and then they can lift more weight. So now how can you use this? Well, if you're going in and you're doing low reps and your goal is to increase the weight that you're lifting, then rather than focusing on the target muscle, like when you're squatting, like glutes, quads, hams, whatever, it's about getting tight, driving, psyching yourself up. If you're bodybuilding or body sculpting and you're doing a squat and you're like, I want my glutes to fire more, or I want to feel this more in my quads, then focusing on that muscle and its actions will actually do that. So how you do the lift from a mental, and if people forget this, right? That muscles are dumb. Like you take a muscle off your body, it doesn't do anything. It's the brain, it's the central nervous system that controls the muscles. So how you think while you do the lift can actually have a significant effect to the point where if you do this for years and years and years, you'll notice a difference in development and strength.
Well, you know where I really saw this was working with high school kids and being able to teach them how to create that kind of stability and to be able to generate more tension throughout their body and their muscles to be able to kind of ground themselves. It was like a totally foreign concept to a lot of the kids because they just look at the exercise and they want to like produce the exercise and just kind of get through the workouts. And that's just always been the intention is like, I got to get through the workouts. I'm exhausted. I sweat and that's sort of like the end result. And to really spend that extra amount of time and like keep them in position and now to squeeze and produce force. So one thing that I did that was very helpful, I took this from Joe DeFranco, was using those grip testers. And so like you'd have them come in and just to be able to focus on increasing that number was like, you have to use your entire body to be able to squeeze that hard. So that was a good hack.
You know, it's another example of what you're talking about too is, you know, have you seen these cases where somebody hits a PR because they actually didn't realize the weight that they put on there?
There's a famous there's a famous case of that where I think it was an Olympic lifter broke a world record because they misloaded the bar and actually loaded it too much.
And that just shows you the power of the mind of like, oh yeah, I've lifted this before, so automatically you already
try that on your buddy.
Surprise him one day. Somebody's gonna hear this episode, fuck their buddy up, and
just changing all the kilos.
Yeah, my bum said I could slide an extra 50 on there. You would know.
You know, I've done this to myself, by the way, where I've worked out in a gym once and the plates were in kilos. And, you know, you could do the math, right? 1 kilo is 2.2 pounds.
I can so see you doing
this. But
this.
I purposefully didn't count. I just threw plates on when I felt like I could do more. And I said, I'll add it all up at the very end.
Yeah.
And when I added it up, I was like, oh, crap, that was a PR. I actually hit a PR, and I wonder if it would have psyched me out.
I've actually heard guys say that that's why they prefer kilograms so they don't get so focused on the weight because, like, doing the 2.2 math is like, I mean, if you got enough 5s and 10s and 25s on there, it's like, oh man, that's too difficult to do that. And I'm not really, I'm not focused on exactly the number.
So it's funny because the reason why this was, you know, how I opened is I did this today in my workout. So lately I've been doing a lot of bodybuilding where I'm like trying to sculpt and focus on target muscles. And today I did that. And so the goal with that is to slow down the rep, I did back today. So I'm like feeling the target muscle, feel the lat squeeze or the rhomboid squeeze or whatever part of my back I'm trying to work. And then when I hit like, I can't do another rep, I switched my mentality. I said, let me squeeze out a few more reps with the same kind of mindset I use when I'm going heavy. And I got 4 more reps. So I couldn't have done it with the other mindset of feeling the muscle. It was almost like I went to failure. But then I got psyched up and I'm like, let me see if I can get 3 or 4 more and stop trying to feel the back, just move the weight. And I was able to do it. And I was like, man, it's so crazy how just that mindset can change how the exercise feels, how what you're working gets affected. And they've backed this up with studies. It's funny because bodybuilders and strength athletes have been talking about this before we had technology where we could see muscles being activated, we could see muscle fiber recruitment. Bodybuilders talked about this all the time. Arnold would say, when you're doing your curls, he'd say, focus on the peak of the bicep and imagine the bicep growing or whatever. And it sounded hokey, but he was actually onto something. He was on to
it's all about the squeeze and the feel and trying to really
it's like
enhance
coming.
that process.
it's
It's like coming.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming.
people don't know that.
As good as coming.
You got to watch Pumping Iron. How old were you when you first watched Pumping Iron?
That's a good question. I wonder when I probably got introduced to it actually not till later because I didn't get into lifting until
So you're probably in your 20s?
No, probably 15, 16.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't get into really lifting until 18, 19, but I was working out at my buddy's garage. He had one of my good friends had a garage. His dad had a garage gym. And of course, when we all started getting girlfriends and that became the main, I think at one point, or I think it's common that you all of a sudden focus becomes girls. You do everything for the attention of girls.
And then it never changes.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, and I think that was right around 15, and so I think that even though we had no idea what we were doing. The fact that his dad had that in the garage, we're in there getting arm pumps. We were doing a lot of tricep pushdowns and barbell curls and stuff.
So I watched. I watched it then. I think I was 14 when I first watched it.
Okay, so it's around the same time, not this.
Yeah, so I started lifting about 14, seriously, and I right away fell in love with it. And my cousin and I,
your sexual imprint kind of time frame.
right in that.
Right then.
That explains
a lot. I cannot do concentration curls without. No, so my cousin and I, we were already fans of Arnold because remember this was late 80s, early 90s, and Arnold was the action star or whatever. He was the buffest guy, and we're all into trying to get strong or whatever. So I got the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and then I figured out that there was Pumping Iron. So my dad went to at the time it was Photo Drive Up, 24-hour Photo Drive Up was the name of it. This is where you could develop photos but also rent movies. This is how it was back before even Blockbuster. And we saw Pumping Iron. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to watch this. We got to watch this. And I remember putting it on. I had no idea what to expect. Now, remember, I'm 14 years old. And so my exposure to some of the stuff was really minimal. And I remember watching that and Arnold talking about how, when I get a pump, it's like having sex with the woman and coming. And I remember as a kid being like, what?
What is he talking about?
What are you talking about? And I'm like, did he just say what I thought he said?
Yeah.
And I was disappointed. I was actually disappointed as a kid. I was like, why would he say that? That's so stupid. Coming. What the hell is he talking about? So dumb. Then I got older and I was like, oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, man.